A quick look back at U.S. midterm elections and at what did and didn't happen. Is Iran looking at waging cyber-enabled economic warfare? If you use Apache struts, update now to avoid remote code execution. A spyware delivering app is smishing Spanish-speaking users of the Play Store. And once again, people really seem to think that Elon Musk will return them their Bitcoin donations tenfold. Enough people to make crime pay, anyway. It's time to tell you about our sponsor, Threat Connect. With Threat Connect's in-platform analytics and automation, you'll save your team time while making informed decisions for your security operations and strategy. Find threats, evaluate risk, and mitigate harm to your organization. Every day, organizations worldwide leverage the power of Threat Connect to broaden and deepen their intelligence, validate it, prioritize it, and act on it. Threat Connect offers a suite of products designed for teams of all sizes and maturity levels. Built on the Threat Connect platform, the products provide adaptability as your organization changes and grows. Want to learn more? Check out their newest white paper titled Threat Intelligence Platforms: Open Source versus Commercial. As a member of a maturing security team evaluating threat intelligence platforms, or TIP, you may be asking yourself whether you should use an open source solution like a malware information sharing platform, or MISP, or buy a tip from one of the many vendors offering solutions. In this white paper, Threat Connect explains the key technical and economic considerations every security team needs to make when evaluating threat intel solutions to help you determine which is right for your team. To read the paper, visit threatconnect.com/cyberwire. That's threatconnect.com/cyberwire. And we thank Threat Connect for sponsoring our show. Major funding for the Cyberwire podcast is provided by Cylance. From the Cyberwire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your Cyberwire summary for Wednesday, November 7th, 2018. The U.S. midterms are over with, as the Wall Street Journal puts it, no significant foreign influence seen by either officials or private companies watching the vote for cyber attacks. That is, there was no apparent wave of hacked databases, manipulated vote counts, voter suppression by electronic alteration of records, systematic fraudulent voting enabled by computer network attack, denial of service, and so on, what we've had occasion to call hacking proper. This is despite the various problems found in voting hardware around the country, no more than usual. Most observers didn't even see a particularly large spike in election targeting information operations. Facebook did confirm that the coordinated inauthenticity they found in about 100 accounts the social network suspended this week was connected to Russian operators. Those operators included, unsurprisingly, the notorious St. Petersburg troll farm that calls itself the Internet Research Agency. The various ongoing influence operations spotted seem to amount to a new normal and can be expected to continue post-election. Some of that disinformation will seek to shake confidence that the election was fairly conducted, as the U.S. Department of Homeland Security emphasized in press briefings yesterday. All that matters to the adversaries is creating an impression that the vote was untrustworthy. All of this is, of course, gratifying to see. The apparent lack of hacking proper may remind older observers of what happened, for the most part nothing really, at the end of the Y2K panic. But it's also likely that, as Fifth Domain reflects, that the relatively smooth election was the result of some intelligent preparation over the past 2 years. There's surely more effective sharing of information between federal agencies and state election bodies, and the Department of Homeland Security seems to have been patiently working to build some sensible consensus models. What effect, if any, the barking about U.S. Cyber Command's ability and willingness to rain virtual scunion down on foreign state that so much as looked sideways at the polling is, of course, unknown. The U.S. willingness to openly signal that it was prepared to cry havoc and release the dogs of the World Wide Web was interesting and will be worth watching in the future. Those interested in nation-state threat actors and what might be expected of them may find the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's outline of Iran's cyber-enabled economic warfare interesting. Their analysis suggests that Iran's willingness and ability to learn have made it a more dangerous actor in cyberspace. The study also concludes that reimposition of sanctions against Iran for what the U.S. considers Tehran's violations of the agreed framework to limit nuclear proliferation in the region will embolden the regime to resume cyber attacks against economic targets in regional rivals like Saudi Arabia and perennial adversaries like the U.S. and Israel. In the aftermath of a data breach, it's become routine for observers to keep an eye on the dark web to see if and how quickly the breached data makes its way into underground online markets. Christian Lees is CISO, and he also heads up the intelligence team at InfoArmor, where they spend a good amount of time monitoring the dark web.
The state of the dark web today is, in my humble opinion, could be compared to any other major marketplace, right? It's driven by supply and demand, and it's much like an organism. It moves, it corrects itself, it adapts. I see being in the dark web every day, I see it absolutely growing. It's growing massive very quickly.
We see marketing messages, certainly towards consumers, that it's this scary thing, this bad neighborhood that you don't want to accidentally wander into or find your information in there. How does that compare to what you see?
It's actually a great question. I mean, again, I think that when, consumers, when we think of the dark web, we automatically think of that guy with the hoodie and, he has like no face. And in my humble opinion, I really think that what's going on in the dark web is, again, of course, naturally we have this kind of elite closed area, kind of like what you alluded to, right? Almost like a speakeasy, right? It's like 2 knocks and a whistle and they open the door and you get in. There's certainly that kind of environment, very closed marketplace. But this is really for the elite threat actor. And I think what we are seeing today is these elite threat actors that are very difficult to get to are more willing to kind of engage third-party brokers. And that's where we kind of see the dark web absolutely expanding, right? So let's let these third-party brokers resell in the more kind of open environment.
So for organizations that are out there trying to protect themselves, what's an appropriate way for them to dial in the amount of concern and attention they should pay to the dark web?
That's a very difficult question, right? Because we are doing nothing. We as consumers and we as organizations, we are doing nothing but increasing our digital identity every single day. And that's what fuels the underground economy, right? For example, compromised credentials, which is largely commodity-based data within the underground economy. But we are so willing to go use our credentials, oftentimes, unfortunately, our corporate credentials for these third-party websites. This is where the suppliers gets their goods, right? Compromising these third-party websites, and that fuels the underground economy. So I think that many organizations, they have a sophistication level that they can monitor open source environments and check for their data. But for the small to medium businesses, it's pretty difficult, right, to understand the dark web. And obviously, I recommend that they partner with an organization that helps them hunt the hunter within the underground economy. I speak all over the world. I speak to, the InfoSec community, and something that I find a little disappointing is I hear this constant trend or this constant comment in the info security world of it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it just drives me insane. So I would just like to take 1 minute and acknowledge the amazing work that the good people do, the info security. We protect every day. We do a really great job. So I think it's really worthwhile just to acknowledge that. However, having said that, I something that has that we are currently researching in the underground economy is, threat actors. They are, like I said, the underground economy. It's an organism. It adapts. It moves. They are in recognition at how well organizations do protect For example, it was not long ago that you could simply go to your bank with your username and password, right? So threat actors were regularly selling a username and a password and a URL to log into, and a threat actor could have a heyday with that. However, today, these organizations tend to protect with system variables. So threat actors today are actually not only selling the credentials, they're also selling the variables of your environment, of your machine itself. So, for example, if I were to go to my financial institution, they're going to look at perhaps my browser or an MD5 hash in my browser. They're going to look at perhaps maybe cookies that I have on my system, or patching level, or the resolution of my screen, and they're going to make kind of like this pre-decision about me prior to ever successfully putting in my credentials. That if my environment doesn't essentially match the known variables of these credentials, they're going to step up challenge me. And threat actors have, they've gotten wise to this. So now in these underground economy, dark markets, they're actually selling not only the credentials, but they're selling the user's environments, the variables, along with it, the cookies, all of the settings, and they package it up in just a small web browser extension that you load. Therefore, you can bypass the step-up challenge, which to me is absolutely mind-blowing.
That's Christian Lees from InfoArmor. The Apache Software Foundations urge users of Struts 2.3.36 to update the Commons file upload library to avoid a remote code execution flaw. Struts is widely used, and the recommendation should be taken seriously. Security firm Trend Micro warns that a malicious app in Google Play is appearing in Spanish-language smishing attacks. At the end of October, Trend Labs researchers found an app, Mobile Secure, available in the Play Store. It represents itself as a mobile token service, but was in fact spyware. The developers, who've succeeded in getting other malicious wares into the chain-link fenced garden of Google Play, were unusually slick and persuasive in offering a professional-looking impersonation of a legitimate app. But, of course, you don't really need to even be that persuasive. For example, nobody falls for advanced fee scams anymore, right? I mean, really, right? I mean, who's going to believe that someone would actually marry you if you sent them some money? After all, that scam was exposed as far back as the Three Stooges' Crash Goes the Hash, Opus 77, 1944, when the society matron was saved by freelance reporters from the bogus married proposal of a crook who styled himself the Prince Sham of Ubidarn. By the way, if you don't know Mr. Howard and Fine's Opus 77, our film criticism desk recommends it highly. A film of novelistic complexity, they say, going on to call it a ringing affirmation of journalistic integrity and a rejection of the bald cynicism of Citizen Kane. 2 thumbs way, way up, and it makes Last Year at Marienbad look like an 8mm knockoff of It's a Wonderful Life. And for sure, no one would think that Elon Musk is actually like giving away 10 times the amount of Bitcoin you send over to him just to establish your identity, right? Wrong. It seems that a relatively convincing set of hijacked Twitter accounts, up for only about a day, convinced people to send in 392 Bitcoin payments, amounting to about $180,000. Let that sink in. People were convinced enough to act 392 times and give the bogus Elon a nice $180K payday. But what's that, you ask? Weren't people looking for the blue check seal of authenticity? They were looking, and the blue check was there for all to see. They overlooked usage errors and bad grammar to swallow the fish bait, hook, line, and sinker. So those who live by the blue check die by the blue check, figuratively, of course. So if you're asked to send some money in advance, just don't. And if you slip up and do, then lawyer up. May we recommend someone like I. Cheatham, the attorney featured in the Stooges' fine Opus 83, Pests in a Mess. And now a bit about our sponsors at VMware. Their trust network for Workspace ONE can help you secure your enterprise with tested best practices. They've got 8 critical capabilities to help you protect, detect, and remediate. A single open platform approach, data loss prevention policies, and contextual policies get you started. They'll help you move on to protecting applications, access management, and encryption. And they'll round out what they can do for you with micro-segmentation and analytics. VMware's white paper on a comprehensive approach to security across the digital workspace will take you through the details and much more. You'll find it at thecyberwire.com/VMware. See what Workspace ONE can do for your enterprise security. thecyberwire.com/VMware. And we thank VMware for sponsoring our show. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Justin Harvey. He's the Global Incident Response Leader at Accenture. Justin, it's great to have you back. I wanted to touch today on breach notification laws and the impact that they have on incident response. What can you share with us?
Well, I've been seeing a trend that companies are rushing to notify regulators of a data breach. And the startling aspect is how they revise their numbers. And I'm not going to call anyone out specifically, but you see some organizations that are reporting the tens of millions or the hundreds of millions identities that they have been suspected to have been stolen. And that sets off a firestorm of activity. People are getting worried. They don't know really yet if they've been affected. And many times, these organizations can actually do themselves a disservice or harm by alerting the regulators and being so public, because the adversaries are now aware that there has been a breach and or that they have been found. And I think that a more pragmatic approach has to be adopted by our industry, by organizations, and by regulators to have a time period for investigation. My team frequently responds to these large-scale incidents and breaches. It's really quite startling being on the inside and not exactly knowing the extent, and then organizations go public. There's still a little bit of revising that has to happen in the public sense. So I think that regulators really need to give that time period to companies in order to get their facts straight, to understand the scope of the impact, and be able to articulate that in a very clear way to the public before rushing to judgment.
So do you envision this being something where the organization could perhaps contact the regulators and say, hey, we've had a breach, and then allow them to make their case? This is why we think it's in everyone's best interest to wait a little while before we go public with this.
Yes, I think that there is a graded or there's a gradient approach that should be adopted by regulators, so that the first level would be, we have an incident, we think it's of this scope, but give us some time, and be able to have a dialogue with regulators saying it's going to take us 2 weeks to do the forensics on these 30 machines. And then after those 2 weeks, we will report back on what we know. And if there's some empirical data to support the initial compromise vector and the initial compromise numbers, then the regulator can then help them go public from that. But right now, it seems to be more of a Boolean, a black and white decision point by regulators.
All right, interesting. Justin Harvey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's the Cyberwire. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the Cyberwire possible, especially to our sustaining sponsor, Cylance. To find out how Cylance can help protect you using artificial intelligence, visit Cylance.com. And Cylance is not just a sponsor, we actually use their products to help protect our systems here at the Cyberwire. And thanks to our supporting sponsor, VMware, creators of Workspace ONE Intelligence. Learn more at vmware.com. The Cyberwire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technology. Our CyberWire editor is John Petrick, social media editor Jennifer Iben, technical editor Chris Russell, executive editor Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.